Welcome to this Times Techies webinar. Wishing all of you and your families a very happy new year. Looks like we are into another wave of the pandemic. Hopefully it won't be as bad as the last one, but please take care, stay safe. I'm Sujit John and I have with me my colleague Shilpa Fadnis. The two of us will moderate this discussion. Our discussion today is on what the focus should be for 2022 for the tech industry. Last year was a great one for the Indian IT and technology industry. Demand for technology is soaring around the world because every industry is trying to digitize to insulate itself from the kind of difficulties the pandemic brought. So how is 2022 looking and how should the industry and employees prepare themselves? On our panel today, we have some of the best people to discuss that. We have Debjani Ghosh. Debjani has been on our platform at least twice before. Debjani is the president of NASSCOM, the National Association of Software and Services Companies. He has been in that role since April 2018. NASSCOM has over 2,800 Indian and multinational member companies. As president of NASSCOM, Debjani is responsible for establishing new growth areas for the technology industry in India. She has been continuously counseling policies to government and consulting with industry members to enable a culture of co-creation and develop a flourishing ecosystem for the ITES to grow. Prior to NASSCOM, Debjani was with Intel for over 10 years in different roles, the last of which was as MD of India. Debjani was the first woman to lead Intel India. Welcome, Debjani.
Thank you. We have with us Ramkumar Narayanan. Ram too has been on this platform before. He's the VP of Technology at VMware and he's the Managing Director of VMware India. As head of VMware India, Ram leads strategy and growth for VMware's largest global center outside its headquarters in Palo Alto. He serves on NASSCOM's Executive Council and he's the chairperson of NASSCOM's Product Council, the forum that focuses on building software products out of India. Ram's expertise lies in product development, product management, product marketing. Prior to VMware, Ram served in global leadership positions at eBay, Yahoo, and Microsoft. Welcome, Ram.
Thank you, Shilpa.
And we have with us Nitin Rakesh. Nitin is the CEO and Managing Director of Mphasis. Under Nitin's leadership, Mphasis has set a record of highest deal wins in its history and witnessed a growth on market cap from $1.7 billion in 2017 to over $8 billion as of October last year. Nitin's career spans over 2 decades, leading large transnational operations and delivering transformation digital solutions to Fortune 500 companies. He's also the member of the NASSCOM Executive Council. Nitin co-authored a book called Transformation in Times of Crisis that came out in 2020. The book has won multiple international awards. Congratulations and welcome, Nitin.
Thank you.
Those of you viewing this can send in questions through the Facebook comment box. Sujit and I will put them to Debjani, Nitin, and Ram. Debjani, coming to you first, NASSCOM says 2020 will be the year of impact-led innovative digital transformation. Can you help us set the context?
Sure, Shilpa. 2022, I think the accelerated pace of digitization that we saw in 2021, frankly, that we've seen in the last 2 years where COVID has played a key catalyst, is only going to get faster and going to get more intense. I think the opportunities for the IT industry are growing exponentially, and it's happening across sectors. It's happening for the legacy sector, the so-called legacy sector. It's happening for emerging areas like deep tech startups, products, et cetera, et cetera. So the opportunities ahead of the industry, pretty much we have not seen this level of growth and this level of pace of growth ever in the history of the industry. Second, I think to leverage these opportunities that are getting created, the industry has to transform. The industry has to focus on reinventing its business processes, its customer engagement processes, its entire employee engagement and talent strategy. And there's a lot of thought process that's going in to figure out not just how do we reinvent, but who reinvents faster, because that's the person that's going to pretty much walk away with the winner's title. And then as we've seen in the last 2 years, I think the purpose of technology is also getting redefined in all our minds by companies, by customers, by governments, where we are beginning to realize how important the role of technology in our lives is. how we used to talk about technology being all pervasive. Today, we have realized that we cannot live without it. We cannot do anything without it. It is absolutely needed for learning, for work, for communication, family time, entertainment, whatever, for e-commerce, for shopping, everything, right? So as it truly becomes, or it sort of weaves into every aspect of life, I think there are very, very important and interesting conversations that are starting about how do we ensure that it becomes more of an equalizer, it's inclusive in everything it does versus becoming the great divider, because we cannot have that given the role technology plays in our lives today. How do we ensure security? How do we ensure that it's responsible? In how it is being built, not just in how it's being used. So I think this is going to be the biggest, for me, this is going to be the most interesting area and the biggest challenge for the industry, because we have to get this right. We have to figure out, how do we ensure the highest possible impact? How do we ensure the impact is inclusive? The impact is safe. And we also have to start thinking about sustainability very seriously. So in short, to me, that's what the next 12 months plus looks like. And I think those are the topics that as an industry we'll be spending a lot of time thinking through.
And you think companies will have to come together a lot to do some of these things?
Absolutely. And I say this, and I say this with a lot of conviction, that one of the biggest differentiators of the tech industry in India, not just Indian companies, but the tech industry in India, the Indian companies, the MNCs, is how we collaborate. And I do give NASSCOM a lot of credit for that, because it's the glue that brings them all together. But that collaboration, and that especially when we have to work on new opportunities, or we have to solve big problems, that collaboration is absolutely priceless. And I haven't seen that, frankly, in any other country.
Okay, that's interesting. Nitin, I mean, on the same thing, you are based out of the US, you're sitting in New York right now. Give us a sense, how is Indian IT perceived in the US? Have things changed a lot in the recent past, especially with the pandemic?
I think the position of our industry kind of has gone from strength to strength, I would say, over the last 20 years. What I call a great wave of value migration started, 20 years ago with, the arrival of the Y2K driven, branding that we created. And since then, every year, every phase, every, new opportunity, every new wave of investment, we've actually gone strength to strength. So I don't think there's a question today that, we are seen as a go-to, set of companies for almost all enterprises in every industry all over the world when it comes to not just run IT or, or Debjani called it legacy IT. I think that's kind of what we did 20 years ago. But right now, almost every large enterprise has an initiative underway of what we call transformation, which is really all about adopting new tech, embracing, this massive culture of customer centricity experience, finding ways to consume tech differently using technologies such as cloud. And I think almost every enterprise has one, and many times more than one, of our industry players in there driving the transformation. And I think the biggest shift we've seen in the last 2 years is, if there was ever a doubt, it's not about tech being a back office function, or there was a very interesting article in the Wall Street about a month ago, which called for the death of the IT department because tech is all pervasive in every segment, right? So I think this mainstream adoption of everything tech in every value stream, every part of every enterprise, has seen this massive adoption of our services. And that's the reason we've seen over the last 12, 18 months, a serious uptick in growth rates and everything that goes with it from a demand perspective. So I think it's right now very mainstream. We're in the middle of many large marquee transformations, not just as a company, but of course as an industry. And I think this wave is in its early stages. This is not a 1-2 year run. It's I would say a structural shift that has happened that will last many, many years.
And IT services companies like yours, I'm sure you have transformed a lot, but what is pending? I mean, what more needs to be done now?
I think it's I don't think we can ever rest back and say we've done enough. I think our biggest opportunity and our biggest threat comes from the fact that tech is ever changing and the obsolescence risk is very high. So not only do we have to make sure that we keep our clients relevant by making sure that they adopt the latest and the most amenable form of tech, but we also have to keep investing to stay ahead of the curve. And let me give you a couple of examples, right? If you think about 2 years ago, quantum was a pipe dream. It was seen as a 10-year run, 5-year run. Today, we actually have live implementations that are already started undertaking. That's one big, massive, wave that'll run through over the next 2 or 3 years, in addition to what we already have done. Second, if you look at just the adoption, 2021 was a breakthrough year for technologies such as Bitcoin, blockchain, crypto. Not because it's an investable asset class. I mean, yes, that's interesting, but that's not so much more interesting than the fact that you're now starting to see many of these protocols become very, very core to things like decentralized finance. So almost every large initiative around finance has an element of blockchain, Ethereum, Avalanche, many of these protocols. Two, I think there is a very significant pivot underway in the, in not just the tech world, but the consumer world, with massive adoption of things like metaverse and NFTs. And that has a massive implication on many industries, not just social media. I think so. All of these were not even on the horizon a year ago, right? So how do you kind of keep up with making sure that you're able to understand what the use cases are, how these will get impacted, how our clients will get impacted with these technologies, and what we can do to effectively, step up and help them. So I think while this is a very, fascinating time, this is also a little bit of a time where you have to be extremely cautious of, how suddenly overnight things can change dramatically. And the ability to respond to those changes is something that we are trying to build capability.
I'll come back to that response part and those new technologies later. But Ram, let me bring you here. As Debjani said, I mean, Indian technology industry has not seen this level of growth. Probably the first time we are seeing this levels of growth. You represent two segments in some ways. There is the global in-house center, global capability center side. VMware has a huge center in India. You are also you head the NASSCOM Product Council, which basically works with a lot of Indian startups who are developing products for the world and for India. Yeah. These two segments, give us an idea. As much excitement, as much growth.
Sure, Sujit. I don't like to think about these as two separate things. And for what Debjani mentioned, I think, I get tired of, I should say, I don't get tired of saying this. We have the most unique ecosystem in the world today. I think there is no other place in the world today that I would rather be as a technologist right now, because, you have the ability, and like for what you said, I straddle two parts of the continuum in some sense, right? The large companies, the large global SIs, the medium-sized companies, the SMEs segment that is, shifting from services to product, because they're converting the knowledge that they've gained over the last 10, 20, 30 years into now providing SaaS services for their customers, right? They are also realizing that their business model is shifting. And then, of course, our startup ecosystem, right? And then all of this surrounded, as a village by our mentor pool, phenomenal technologists who have been through the curve. I mean, at NASSCOM, we have a number of these communities that we have created over the last few years. They're amazing communities. I mean, the kind of people who are on it and who participate. It's like learning every minute, right? Even though we feel like we're getting inundated with messages on WhatsApp, but at the same time, the kind of people who are sharing their knowledge is just phenomenal, right? And we're trying to unlock that. So the way I would think about this is actually, while 2022 is the topic of discussion today, I would like, as a good product person, I'd like to think short, medium, long term. So 2022, if we count that as the short term, the next 12 months, whatever it is, we still have a milestone, let's say to take 2025, right? That we have to keep an eye on and say, what is emerging in 2025 that we have to work backwards from and start to think about it today. And then what is 2030 going to look like that we can help shape? I think this is one of those times in India's technology, history in some sense, where we have an opportunity to get ahead of the curve. Some of the new emerging technologies that Nitin was talking about, right? This is undiscovered. I mean, if you talk about Web3, Meta, a lot of these things that are emerging, crypto and DeFi, you can DAO, whatever, right? This is greenfield. This is how cloud was being discussed 10 years ago, right? And maybe, we participated in that more from a services perspective. Now is the time for us to start to say, okay, you know what, these new emerging deep tech, new opportunities that are coming up, let's take advantage of that and take charge of it, right? Now, the second piece to this is talent. And, I think we have talked about talent a lot, right? How talent needs to transform, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, to some extent, we are underselling ourselves, right? Because if you think about it, why is the growth happening here? Of all the various segments that we talked about, because of the fact that we have people who are technologists, our young people are well plugged in. I mean, our college students are probably more plugged into Web3 and Meta and, all of these things than many of those around the world. So the new world is really on the deep tech side, right? But the thing is, we also have to encourage our talent to pick up that challenge and actually drive. Because I think, to me, that is the biggest opportunity we have over the next 5-10 years. And as industry leaders, it is our opportunity to actually help that talent achieve its entire potential. And I think, we have got it to a certain point, and I think people have got to a certain level. Now we need to reframe what talent, what is the expectation of the talent that we have, and be very clear about it, right? And I am actually very bullish about the fact that if we show the way, people, our folks are quite capable of picking it up and driving it. The third piece that I would say is, unprecedented opportunity brings unprecedented risk with it. So when you think about regulatory, Debjani touched upon ethics and, doing it the right way. It's something for us to think about and helping shape that as well. Because I think there's an opportunity here to take a thought leadership position globally in terms of how we show the way that use technology effectively, not only effectively, but also use it, for the right reasons, tech for good. One of the things that's become very clear over the last couple of years is the question of empathy. And technology for empathy may be a new term that we need to start thinking about, is how can technology play a role in that? And how can India lead the way in that? And I'm quite confident that we can, but we need to shape the right questions, the right problem statements, and then go after that, right? Because risk, governance, compliance, everything is going to get reinvented in this new world. And regulatory aspects, we're already seeing a lot of this discussion around crypto, right? Every country is now trying to figure out what to do with crypto and how to deal with crypto, regulatory aspects. Nobody has an answer. I think it's a great opportunity to shape the dialogue. And I know, the NASSCOM led by Debjani and all of us supporting are very in the thick of a lot of these conversations. And I think it's a phenomenal time as a technologist to be in the space and kind of help shape this for the future.
And you'd rather be in India than even Silicon Valley, is it?
Oh, absolutely. I've been back for 17 years in India now, and I've seen the growth over the last 17 years. And I've been fortunate to be part of the NASSCOM product journey over the last 13, 14 years. And I've seen it shift. I would not be anywhere else right now. And I'm here, right? That's the reason I'm here.
Yeah. No, what you said about youngsters is absolutely true. I mean, we've been hearing on this platform itself, a couple of HR folks who said even tier 2, tier 3 institution students now, some of them so good, some of those people graduating from institutions.
Yeah, Sujit. I mean, we hire a number of new college grads into VMware. And a lot of our best talent comes from tier 2 and tier 3. And, we do 6-month internships. And, in those times, we're just amazed by the kind of quality of people that are there. I mean, it's just that they did get either an opportunity to go to tier 1, and only so many people can go to tier 1 colleges all the time, right? So I think absolutely, you're absolutely right.
Yeah, on the talent front, Sujit, if I can jump in here, I know, as Ram said, see the tech domain or the tech expertise, I think we have an absolute upper hand in, because it's good. It's the basic foundation of science and math, the ability to, we have the next generation are all digital natives any which way, the ability to pick up these new technologies, understand these new technologies. I think all of that is playing out very well. I think what we have to shape as an industry are some of the core values, which I believe are so important for success in terms of, the ability to work together, the ability to solve problems, the ability to bring in a level of design thinking into what you do. Communications, as Nitin said, today an engineer has to be in front of the customer. They cannot sit in the back room and just code, right? And unfortunately, when you look at our education system, these are the values we are not very good in building through our, many years of formal education. We do a very good job of building the foundation in science, maths, and all the subjects, but we don't teach kids to be curious. We don't teach kids to collaborate. We don't teach kids to, ask questions. So I think this is exactly what the industry needs right now. So that's the place we have to work on. It's more about building the right kind of mindset, the right kind of these core values.
I think there's another element to talent. I think one is obviously how do we carry them along? How do we make sure that everybody has an opportunity to upskill, understand some of these new technologies, because they have core technology skills, but how do you make them adaptable to the cloud world? So that's one part that the industry started to do really, really well. Almost every large company has a massive, reskilling initiative underway, and I think with NASSCOM's skilling initiative, that's become a lot more mainstream, even available to the mid-sized companies, smaller companies. Other part of that is scalability, and I think that's an area where we've started to do a lot of work as well, because if we have to be world's talent factory, ability to provide cutting edge talent for the next 10 years, I think we have some work to do in making sure that we are also able to go beyond Bangalore and Pune and Hyderabad into tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 cities in India. And I think one of the things that at least NASSCOM's been also working with the government on is how do we expand not just the pool of talent, but the ability of companies to go into these newer locations, newer cities, to create, now that we have a virtual hybrid world, how do we expand into many other locations? Because that's the only way we can actually start creating that network effect that we need. And I think that will be a pretty big initiative over the next 2 or 3 years. At least at our company level, we are trying to adopt at least 2 towns that we can work with in creating the next hub that we think can become a core location for the industry. So I think it's both right skills, but also the right scale.
I think there's a very important point you made. Just this morning I was talking to Atul Jalan. He's just taken over a company in Colombo, and he was in Sri Lanka today in Colombo. I think final discussions or whatever. One of the reasons he's taken over, of course, technology of that company is one of the reasons he's taken over. But the other reason he said is that he wants to create a talent hub there. He says he's upset with the attitude, he called it. It was a poor line, so I didn't want to press the matter for too much. But he said attitude of people in Bangalore, engineers, probably he's talking about salaries. Maybe Ram can step in, and I don't know how it's impacting all the salary thing, how it's impacting the smaller startups. I don't know whether that is what Atul said, but he's trying to create this hub in Colombo, and he wants to expand that hub. Like Nitin said, I think smaller towns in India can also probably do the same thing, but he's probably found an opportunity.
No, absolutely. I think, look, at the end of the day, we are going through our growing pains. That like I said, the good news is that our talent is recognized the world over. People are beating their door down to get here. We are seeing not just the large MNCs who are setting up their global centers here, but medium-sized or smaller, startups from the US are setting up their development centers here as well, right? So it is not that. So I think, there are 2 ways of looking at this. If I look at it from a certain class of industry, cost becomes a huge factor. I'm sure, Nitin can talk about how IT services, are very much driven on the cost equation, right? Because the business model is set up that it's not right or wrong. Whereas product companies, it's really about talent investment upfront that you actually start to recoup downstream, because the innovation that you produce has the ability to scale and create new products and new opportunities. And we have seen all these unicorns getting created in India, right? I mean, more are getting created on a daily basis. I think 2022, we had the second one today with Fractal. So it is an amazing time for talent as well, right? So to some extent, the talent is exercising their demand. They are saying, look, I'm producing world-class products. You're recognizing me as world-class talent. Pay me on a world-class basis. Now, it is if you're looking at it from a budgeting perspective in the short run, yes, it's a challenge, right? But if you look at it over time, in fact, there was an article that got published recently where I think the Evernote CEO from the US said, hey, engineers in India should get paid the same as engineers in Silicon Valley if they're doing the exact same type of work. Now, yeah, I mean, I'm not getting into the economics of what it is or the cost of living adjustments and all of those kind of discussions. But the fact that you have world-class talent is starting to play its part. And it is not, so that is where I come back to this point with, what I said earlier. The talent has to show that they're capable of making that kind of, demands, which means that they need to start producing not just what people give them a blueprint on, but start to drive the innovation and world and thought leadership. We need to be able to produce those 5, 10 companies that are number 1 or number 2 in their market segment. It is not about unicorns. I mean, I think we have crossed that bridge already. Now we need to focus on what key metrics that these companies need to produce. Number 1, number 2 in their category, right? And not a narrow category, broad category. We need those kind of companies. I'm not going to say, who's going to be the Facebook of India or the Microsoft of India. That's a passé conversation. We really need to say companies that are producing 1 and 2 in their market category are producing revenues that are world class, right? I mean, which are demanding. It's one thing to get the valuation; it's another thing to produce the revenue if they go public. And I think, or at least on a market basis. So I think input metrics around that is what we need to focus on and do. So to me, I think the talent thing is only leading the broader discussion, and the rest of the pyramid needs to appear soon, which is how are we doing? Where are these companies going? How are they doing overall on the world stage? And I think that's where our theme at NASSCOM is a recurring theme starting this year or last year, 2021, is world class from India. And world class has a set of connotations built into it, and of the things that I just talked about. So I think while I'm sure there's a lot of pain in a lot of places around this whole talent discussion in terms of demand and things like that, but you know what? I'm okay with talent hubs getting created in Colombo and Bangladesh and a few other places, and to tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 in India. We need, the world supply needs to grow because the demand is so high right now that no one geo can service all of it. So, more power to those folks who are creating other talent.
That's what IT services companies are generally doing, I think. They are spreading across the world.
Sujit, just to put some numbers to it, the skills industry report that was brought out end of last year by, I think, Coursera, that estimated that in the next 5 years, there's going to be 149 million new jobs being created in digital roles, right?
In India? Oh, sorry, where?
No, across,
globally, yeah.
Globally, 149 million.
Can't be India, yeah.
Everyone has to pull in their weight and create the talent. And I absolutely want India to do more and frankly, do better, because I do believe there's an opportunity for us. There is a current talent crisis. There's no two ways about it. And I absolutely believe we are in the position to turn that crisis into an advantage for ourselves by producing the best talent, which is what the government, industry, I think everyone is totally in sync in terms of saying, this is the opportunity, let's act with the highest level of urgency and do it. That doesn't mean other countries will not do the same. I think this is what everyone's going to try and compete on. We just have to do it better.
I think there is one more point that we cannot ignore when it comes to talent and the current times. I think the employer-employee relationship has changed forever in the last 2 years. It doesn't matter whether you're building a product and you have to deliver just the product, or whether you're in the services company and you have to deliver a product and services and profits. I think it's just the great resignation wave that we've seen. I mean, just think about the mind-boggling statistic that came out yesterday. In the US labor force, 4.5 million people quit their jobs in the month of November. I mean, that's a mind-boggling statistic. So I think it's not just the talent and the shortage of tech talent issue. It's also the fact that we are in for a very different relationship between employers and employees. It isn't just about work from home versus work in the office. I think everything's gone into it: balance of life, empathy, inclusion. Almost every industry is going through a certain crisis moment when it comes to what is the engagement proposition, what is the value proposition to the employees, and how do you engage them in a world where you don't see them every day, 5 days a week. So I think this is a multitude of factors, a very complex equation that we're trying to solve right now. But again, we have an opportunity as an industry because we sit right at the cusp of many of these trends. I think we have an opportunity to actually define what a successful model will look like. And almost all of us are really, in a way, running multiple major experiments with this subject right now, because in the end, we are trying to create that value proposition that we think our employees should like. So I think it's a very complex, equation that we're trying to solve. And of course, shortage always brings about a balance of power change between employers and employees. But this is something that seems a lot more fundamental than just a short-term demand supply mismatch.
Absolutely. And I think, Nitin, also this is where the whole conversation about culture becomes tremendously important. What do you stand for? As a company, what do you stand for? I think that's one of the things which the next generation is not just looking for, but they're questioning. Your trustworthiness quotient, your how sustainable, how green are you as a company? I mean, all sorts of things that are coming into play right now. And I think this is where your ability to create that, to create your own differentiation in a world which is full of clutter is going to be very, very important. And I do believe that if you're a CEO, culture is one of the things you should be prioritizing as your job one right now.
So even in India, you're saying, Nitin and Debjani, what? I mean, the resignations that are happening in India is not just for salary reasons.
See, there is short term and long term. In short term, yes, there is the demand right now is 8x more than supply. Okay, just in India. I'm talking about India, and that is growing. We believe in 2 years, if the skill pool doesn't grow exponentially, then the demand will be 20x more than supply. So in this kind of a situation, and I cannot, point my finger at one side and say they are to blame, employees are behaving badly or have attitude. I think everyone has a role to play. How ethical are companies in sort of saying, even if you have an offer, you can come and join me, those conversations also have to take place, right? But I do believe that cannot sustain. It is something we are seeing. It is something that maybe will go on for a few more months, but it is not a sustainable playbook at all. Ultimately, what will play out is, which is the company that I can relate the most with? Where do I want to work? Which is the company that is going to do the most for me? Meet my learning expectations, meet my work-life balance expectations, and growth expectations. All of that will come into play. So this place is evolving. I don't think anyone has the answers and will be able to predict how exactly will it play out. But this is something that I think is a very high priority for the industry to ensure we stay ahead of the changes that are happening.
And since you spoke about the great resignations, there are inflationary wage pressures. How do you think the industry should come together in addressing this? This is not sustainable in the long term. There needs to be some sort of a consensus that will develop over time to address these challenges.
Shilpa, there is nothing we can do as an industry to control wages. I mean, that's just
illegal, Shilpa, for us to do anything of that.
We can't go on that road. The only thing we can do is, we like the fact that there is demand. I think, lack of, adequate talent is as much a tailwind as a headwind for us. But we like the fact that we are in demand, the services are in demand, and the talent is in demand. What we have to do is actually create the net new talent pool. And I think that's really where all the focus right now is.
What is Mphasis and all doing on that count?
Almost everything we talked about, Sujit, all the way from globalizing the talent supply chain. We've opened centers all over the world in the last 18 months between, from Taiwan, Costa Rica, Mexico, Germany, UK, Canada. So that's one part, which is globalizing the supply chain talent pool, making sure that we can bring in different types of talent for different needs, right? Debjani talked about experience and design thinking, for example, right? Not all that talent is available in one location anywhere in the world, even if it is in India. So that's one part. Second, of course, and I talked about the fact that we're very aggressively creating net new talent in new technology areas. We talked about, the quantum area, for example. We've set up a lab of computational thinking with Ashoka University only because we think blending computer science and design is a great idea, right? So how do we use that to create design-oriented engineering talent? We announced a collaboration with the university in Canada in a town called Calgary, where they have a lot of data-driven talent because it's an oil and gas hub. It's all about data. How do we pivot that data talent into the new cloud world? right? So we are actually working together with the university to reskill some of that talent. And thirdly, I think we're also looking at tier 3, tier 4 towns within India to create these new hubs where we can go and build some net new competency and capabilities. I think it's all of the above. And most importantly, I think we've spent a lot of time as a company in creating what Debjani was referring to, which is what I call an employee value proposition. And what do you stand for as a company? Are you a purpose-driven enterprise? Do you blend a lot of the modern thinking, modern management principles of managing a remote workforce? We've actually announced formally that it's a hybrid first model for us. We don't expect people to be in the office every day. I was referring this to as WFX, work from anywhere and collaborate in the office. So I think all of these are linked to the issue of becoming an employer of choice and expanding the talent pool that you can then bring to your customers.
Okay.
So just, I think one thing I would add, since the topic was about innovation when we got started, the thing with innovation and all the points that Nitin was making as well is it requires a diverse set of people to come together to actually innovate, right? And then you tie it together with a culture that is very experimental in its mindset. It's forgiving of people trying new things, and it is not about produce to demand, right? I mean, one of the things I personally, and I know Nitin kind of used it, but I will respectfully disagree with him in this whole talent factory concept. A factory means that it's a blueprint. It's stamping out, the same thing over and over again, right? In a very predictable way. In my mind, future innovative talent needs to be open-ended, right? Should have the ability to synthesize the problem statement, be able to, experiment around it, and then produce results. And I think that is going to be the driver of the future, right? If you think about what product companies have been doing over the years, the successful ones, I really have cultures like that. Maybe over time it kind of devolves, but really those kind of things need to come together. So in India, for example, one of the things, under the NASSCOM Product Council charter, we picked up this fact that we said, look, we've done a great job with engineering over all these years, but we are lacking product management. We are lacking that, the other functions around the engineers to actually make them much more productive. And I think that's been a big focus for us. We're working towards creating 50,000 product. Our big, BHAG is to have 50,000 product managers in India. And when I say product manager, that's just a proxy, because you could say, there is, for every product manager, we need to have 3 or 4 design people. So we need to, those are multiplicative factors. We need analytics. We need analysts, not just who do BI kind of analytics, but who are really kind of shaping future predictive analytics that will help us go forward with AI and machine learning. Right. So I think, we have to create that culture and atmosphere as an industry. And this can't be done by any one company, right? We all have to come together to do this. And I think that's where the NASSCOM platform becomes a very powerful collaboration platform to bring together various people, right? I mean, in some sense, NASSCOM is also Switzerland. Raghu, our CEO, also calls VMware as a Switzerland because of our partnerships that we have with all the global cloud companies, etc., that allows us to do that. But I think I would call NASSCOM a Switzerland here, because you have the ability to then attract people of various sorts, bring them together with a common goal, and take it forward. And that's why you asked me, where would I rather be right now? And I would say I would rather be here, because Silicon Valley was like that 10, 15 years ago, which was a melting pot of talent that companies, people checked in their badges when they came into the Silicon Valley ecosystem. And the badge was only a temporary thing, right? Because people kind of moved around, talk about great resignation, but people moved around. And every time they moved around, it created a whole bunch of new things. And people, brought it up. And entire ecosystem benefited from it. Everybody benefited. It's not just any one company or organization. I think we have the opportunity right now at a global level to do this, and starting from here. And I think, but it requires, I come back to this point that our talent needs to be reframed to how they think. I think Debjani mentioned that, right? In terms of how we kind of grow up. Some of us who had the opportunity to work elsewhere saw how other things need to, can be done. And we brought it back or, try to incorporate it. I think we need to start doing that from here itself. And that could be a big opportunity for us to take.
Okay. Ram, I just want to ask you about what do you see happening in the whole product ecosystem, making in India for the world or making in India for India? Where is the bigger action happening? Are there very different approaches altogether?
I think we have to differentiate by what segments we're talking about. If you're talking about enterprises, large enterprises globally, the problem statements are very similar. It doesn't change much. Whether we are talking about a very large enterprise in India or a large enterprise in the US, yes, local business requirements and cultures may change a little bit here and there, but at the broad level, people have the same kind of problems. But in India, we have other segments too, right? If you think about Bharat, the framing of Bharat, where we have a lot of opportunities to look at how do we bring tech for good in India, or technology effectively for a lot of segments in India. I think the government, in whether it's by foresight or by accident, I don't know. I mean, in the sense that we have created a lot of phenomenal public good platforms in India, and we continue to build on top of it, right? I mean, when Aadhaar was conceived and executed, when UPI was conceived and executed, we didn't know that we were going to land up in the scenarios that we are in today. But we have, all of us have grabbed it with both hands and used it as both consumers as well as businesses which have leveraged it for doing that. I think we need to start thinking further ahead of the curve now. What is the next wave of things? That's why I said, we need to think 2022, we need to think 2025, we need to think 2030. Because that type of three-phase thinking will help us think through what are the next wave of opportunities that we need to do. We can't leave behind certain segments. I think that is also very clear, and especially in a country like India. We can't leave behind segments. I mean, I'll give you an example, right? Even when I say segment, I'm not just talking socioeconomic. It could be other cohorts. It could be older people. We have a large population of older people. When we design a lot of our technologies and products, we don't necessarily think about how an 80-plus-year-old person is actually going to use that technology. Is it intuitive enough? Today, if you go to many of our applications and try to use it and wear the hat of a person who's not a technically savvy person, you'll see it's challenging, right? We have to think through how we do that. So we can't afford to leave segments behind. So this requires, it's not a simple problem statement to say, here we do these three things and everything will happen. But I think we have to create those segments and then create opportunities around it and then take forward people. And then this whole thing that we have already tried out is public goods platforms. I think how do we leverage that even more as we look ahead and grow from there? I think that itself is a very unique opportunity for us here.
Okay. Debjani, you want to add to that? Make in
No,
India?
I think he covered it brilliantly, but I do believe that while the opportunities are there, the problems are there for innovation in India. I do believe we have to bring about a few changes. For example, if you look at funding today, if you look at deep tech funding, the startups that are actually making for Bharat are the last startups to get funds. It's very, very difficult for them to get funding, especially with a lot of our VCs being international or foreign VCs, right? I think this is where we need either government money or Indian investors who are absolutely committed towards scaling technology for the grassroots level for Bharat, to put their money where their mouth is and fund these kind of startups. We need a lot of the last mile purchases done by governments, whether it's central or state or districts or whatever. We need the procurement policies to be completely reinvented, because when you're applying a L1 to deep tech innovation, it just absolutely does not work. So I think some of these reforms have to take place. We have to there's a lot of discussion going on with government to say, how do we fund these ideas? How do we fund? And it can't be
what happened to that fund of funds and all that? Central government was talking about a fund of funds and all that.
It has to be better utilized. It absolutely has to be better utilized. So let's see how all of that falls into place. The opportunity is there. The opportunity is there. The talent is there. The capabilities are there. The innovation is there. We just have to ensure we bring it all together and we create the right channel to create impact.
One of the things, Sujit, I think I'll also point out is, while India has its own opportunities and like what Debjani was talking about, India, Bharat, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes if you think about it, one of my previous jobs, I used to run an emerging market team, right, globally. And what we discovered to our amazement was that cohorts exist of the same kind in different places. So sometimes you solve it in one place, there's an opportunity to take it to other markets, without with the same kind of solutions can be taken elsewhere. And that is something that also, we need to start thinking about is, you asked me about from India for the world, or is it for the world, whatever you want to call it. But I think those are also opportunities, because similar segmentation exists in other countries and other markets. If you do it well in India, you start to experiment, build it, it's acceptable. With minimal changes, you can take it to other parts of the world. And hence, create those bigger addressable markets that then funding can follow, right? So it need not be only for one market, it can be looked upon as a broader charter.
Okay, okay. There are several questions coming.
Actually,
okay.
Sujit, I actually on that point about Make in India for the world. I mean, if you think about the IT services industry, we've been doing that for the last 25 years, anyways, right? We are creating software in India that actually really powers the world. Whether it's banking, whether it is insurance, whether it is retail, airline, I mean, you name it. So I don't think this is a new concept that is only a product company concept, right? I mean, in fact, I remember when Debjani had just taken over, we were debating whether we should really think about using this from a services standpoint as well, right? Because we are creating in India software that pretty much powers the entire global enterprise segment. So I think this is not something.
The other day, Professor Sadagopan was saying, I mean, 30% of the world's banks are run by Indian software or something.
75% or more of Fortune 500 companies work with Indian IT. There you go.
Yeah, I know, absolutely.
And also there are some amazing companies, like I was mentioning earlier, there are SMEs who have converted their knowledge that they've done through services and converting them into products and offering it as SaaS services. And we keep discovering these companies as we go along. They don't hit our radar because they are not the ones who are garnering a lot of the VC funding, right? But they are very solid $100 million businesses, right? Run out of places like Chennai and other places, which, they are running it quietly, building great businesses around the world, and we ourselves don't recognize them sometimes. And we need to.
There's some questions coming in from the audience, interesting ones. There's one, Arvind Kote asking, this for you, Nitin. Did you notice any new digital or business trends in 2021 in the post-pandemic world, the ones after your book got published?
I think it's a little presumptuous for me to say that I'm seeing them after the book, but there are certain ideas that have been floating around that are now starting to get real. For example, how well, I mean, just if you look at the banking world, there is this concept of KYC, know your customer. I think we are starting to see that move away from being a regulatory AML type of construct to actually how well do I really know my consumer, so I can actually create products and services that are very targeted and truly driving this N=1 type of thinking. So I think we're starting to see the emergence of those platforms. There are companies that are actually dedicating their purpose to really building these personalization engines around industries. There are companies that are focused on driving the personalization of products and services. I think there's a whole host of things that have started to happen. But in a way, I also think that my book's about a year old and it's starting to get obsolete if I don't really do another edition soon.
But I have to add here, there's one thing which Nitin talks about in the book, and actually something that Nitin has been talking about even before the book, is how the silos are going to break down. And how that whole silo mindset, which was part of the legacy mindset, is completely getting disrupted. And the faster you just get, disrupted, the faster you'll be able to build your competitive advantage. I do believe, Nitin, that has got accelerated in the last, not 12 months, I would say 12 to 24 months. While you used to say it even before, but we hadn't really seen it happening to the extent that we are seeing it happen now. That has got accelerated significantly.
This thinking of the multi core common, which is how do I pull in all the elements from all across the enterprise to get a better understanding of the end customer. That's kind of essentially what Debjani is talking about. And that's kind of, in a way, you need to do that to be able to drive that N=1 thinking.
Shilpa, I'm sure you have.
Yeah, we have this question from Ranjan Chauhan. At what age do students need to get into the understanding of new age technologies like Web 3.0, Metaverse, blockchain?
Ranjan, you'll start very early. I don't know if there's a right age or a wrong age, but what I have seen is kids are curious by nature and they start very early in terms of understanding these things. But honestly, building a foundation in these new technologies, you can do it at any age. There is no prescribed age or prescribed class, right? Because a lot of this will happen outside your structured curriculum. It will happen because you are interested and you will go onto a portal or site and learn about these technologies, etc. And you can start young, you can start old, but I think the key thing here is just having that learning mindset and being curious about new technologies or anything that's happening around the world and just learning about it and figuring out where you want to build your depth expertise.
I have a similar question here from Tanmay Agarwal. Slightly, how do you see the non-tech, non-engineers get up the curve on the tech journey? Which areas do you think become a must-have skill for non-engineers to be futuristic?
Yeah, I mean, we run into this all the time because some of our best product managers that I've worked with have got non-technology backgrounds.
Yeah.
So I think there are a couple of things here. One is a frame of reference on how to think about the problems that are on hand, whether they're business problems or whatever else they see around them, and how technology can help solve for it. It's not about code. I mean, a lot of people equate technology as coding, and that's, I think, is a wrong frame of reference. Technology at the end of the day is a tool set, right? How it's implemented as a tool set is what an engineer or a developer may care about. But as a user of that technology, it's really about what problem is this going to help me solve, right? And Charlie Munger calls it a lattice framework, where you have a set of concepts and then you start to connect them together, and then you hang these things off of them. And I think that's a good way to start to think about for a non-technology, saying, look, I have a problem at hand. What's available around me that can help me solve this problem, right? It could be, and then start to examine and research based on that. Who else has solved a similar problem? How did they solve it? What did they use to solve it? Those are all ways of learning, right? Now, I just want to add one point to the previous question, right? To a large extent, as a student, Elon Musk calls it, first principles learning. You could call it whatever, right? Feynman principles, whatever you want to call it, teach, learn by teaching, etc. I think for students, I still encourage them, don't get caught up in technology. Some of us have been in this journey for a very long time, have seen a lot of technologies come and go. The ability to break it down into first principles. What is the problem I'm trying to solve? How does this help me solve it? Okay, now if I'm interested in the next level of depth, which says, okay, how is this technology implemented? Yes, sure. Then get into the details of technology, the coding part of it, what does the architecture look like, etc., etc. But not everybody is cut out for it, right?
Yeah.
But the ability to think, to break down the problem to its fundamentals and be able to examine from that lens will stand you in time, even when you're a student and when you're past being a student for life. And I think that is what I would encourage people to think about.
I think a key message for the youngsters today is you're not really getting hired for how much you know, because no matter how much you know, it will soon become outdated. But you are getting hired, or you will get hired, for how quickly you can learn and how interested you are in learning. So again, I keep telling people, the thing you really have to focus on is just making learning a habit, making it sort of your part of your day-to-day life. And there's so many opportunities to learn, whether you read Nitin's book or listen to a podcast or whatever. There's just so many opportunities to learn. But it's all about your ability to show you have a trainable mindset. That's what appeals to companies the most.
So it's basically, EQ, IQ, and LQ, learning quotient.
Yeah. Shilpa?
Yeah, we have this question from Shweta Bindu. What's 5G's role in digital transformation journey in India? Is our infrastructure letting us down? As I read in today's Times Techies, that will become mainstream only after a few years. 5G.
5G.
Implementation challenges.
Debjani, anything on 5G?
The ecosystem is definitely growing. We'll have to see. We'll have to see how the regulation plays out. I will let the experts talk a bit about it. I think Nitin, Ram, what they want to bring in. But I think what we have to be very clear about in India is the usage cases for 5G, and where will it make a difference? I think if 5G is not a 4G upgraded, right? That's usually what people think. It's not. 5G will make a big difference, for example, in businesses, etc. And I think we have to think through, where do we want 5G utilized, and start working with the government to see how we can prioritize implementation, at least for some of these critical sectors like healthcare, etc., where the edge computing becomes extremely important. And that's where, in my mind, 5G definitely has much more than incremental benefit. But Nitin, Ram, anything you guys want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think, yes, there is always room for improvement in infrastructure, but 5G rollout is not without its pains, even in the US. If you recently read, there's a standoff between FAA and the industry right now. So I think there is some work to be done in ironing out a safe way of rolling it out. And I think as it relates to the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure in India, I think it's demonstrated in the last 2 years that we've actually managed to adapt really well. So yes, we can improve, and there will be use cases that will require 5G, but I don't think that's an impediment to digital infrastructure or our growth.
Absolutely.
Okay. Give me an idea of what's happening on the, Nitin, there was, of course, a lot of global companies setting up their own centers, like, of course, VMware is there, but many others, the likes of retail companies and all of them setting up their own centers in India. That versus outsourcing, what is the trend you see there?
I think, Sujit, the demand is so high right now because the need for change is so dramatic that it's not one versus the other. It's actually going hand in hand and complementing each other. I think there is a reason why we exist. If it was only about talent and going and hiring from the same market, then we wouldn't exist as an industry. There's a reason why we exist. And the reason is we have the ability to distill common themes from across industries, across geographies, and create some best-in-class solutions that can accelerate the change. There is a reason why captives exist, and the reason is because there are certain programs that large companies would like to have in-house, and I think that's the reason why they're using India as a global, innovation hub, labs, in-house execution, and so on and so forth. So to me, it's never about. I think we kind of get a little bent out of shape in one versus the other. I think it's always about complementing and finding the right, application of the right partnership model, whether it's with your own internal teams in India or with a third-party provider.
That's interesting. Just a few years ago, I remember some prominent people sounding the death knell of Indian IT services and all that when cloud and all of these newer technologies came. And Indian IT services really reinvented itself. And so what? How do you do it? You have to keep a close track of the.
So I think it's a little bit of everything we talked about. My very first article when I was chairing the IT Services Council at NASSCOM in 2017 was really to counter a world-renowned, tech leader from the Valley who sounded the big death knell for Indian IT. Actually, it was in Times of India that I wrote an op-ed, and I dusted it up and read it again over the holidays. And I think everything I said turned out to be true, which is, I think we have a very, very, entrepreneurial mindset. We try to look around corners. We make sure that we invest in people. We create net new talent. We create net new, again, Ram doesn't like the word factory, but we create scalability. I think the ability to solve problems at scale in an ever-changing environment where tech is dramatically shifting, on a daily basis, I think is the secret sauce that our industry has really learned to master. And we will continue to do that. And I think we have a challenge in our hands right now from a scale perspective again, because it's 8x demand supply mismatch. But as I said, I'm a big believer that that's the biggest tailwind for our industry, and we will solve this puzzle and actually grow leaps and bounds over the next 5 to 10 years.
Wonderful. So I know we are almost out of time. Ram, give your message to startups, big and small. What would you tell them? In terms of where to focus, how to get talent.
No, I think like I said, the digitization, cloud, and all the associated pieces adoption that is happening is creating an unprecedented set of opportunities. But I think I'll also draw upon what Debjani and Nitin said. You need to get to understand your customers, their problems, their business issues much more closely, and look at it not just from an engineering lens, but you got to look at it from a broad lens of, product, process, technology, and say, okay, how do I bring this all together to solve their problem, right? Now, I think we, as to a large extent, I think it's changing, it's shifting. I noticed this in our own founders as I interact with them. Few years ago, it was all about a technology solution, and then start to say, okay, how do I pitch this to my customer? Today, you see them a lot more nuanced, coming in with saying, look, here's the business problem that we need to solve, and here's my solution to that business problem, which I think is a phenomenal shift in mindset of people. So, the way I would say it is, continue to sharpen that saw, continue to keep an open mind in terms of shifts that are happening around you, and bring that back into your core thesis of how you're building your company and what you're building it for. And then don't stop being ambitious. You need to, a young founder should be, or young in not just in age, but young in terms of their journey as a founder, should be able to say, look, you know what, I want to be number one in that category, and I want to go after it. And you know what, there's a whole world around you to support them or support those folks and to go around making that happen. But it starts with their ambition of saying, look, I want to be there. And how do I get there? Who else can help me get there? And so that's my big message to them is be ambitious, take the world by the horns and go after it. We are there to support.
Okay. Nitin, your message to youngsters.
I think this is when I graduated from engineering school in early 90s, it was not the industry it is today. This is the best time to be a technologist. And even if you're not, this is the best time to actually embrace things like design and design thinking. And this is an amazing opportunity for all of us to benefit from. So I think embrace the opportunity and we feel lucky and blessed that you have the platform and the world is our oyster right now.
Okay. Debjani, any messages for industry, companies, employees?
I strongly believe that the era that we are entering will be defined by two things. One is human centricity. Nitin talked a bit about it. And it's not just about customers, but it is about your own employees. When they look at you, what do they see? How do you build those that connect with your employees, the engagement with your employees? And how do you make human centricity a core design principle of everything you do, from designing your products, solutions, to the way how you go to market, how you talk about it, everything. I think that's going to be tremendous. That's what's going to define the next era, I believe, and that's going to be extremely important to get right. And the second thing that an ask I have for our industry, and I continue to push that, is we just have to collectively become much better storytellers. I believe that in the companies in India doing such brilliant work, whether it's startups or large companies, but somehow we are not very effective storytellers. We don't like to tell our own stories, and I think that's especially if you're a young founder. One of the most important skills you can have today is to be an effective storyteller. So, because the Indian tech story, the story of India as a tech hub for the world, how there is some level of Indian innovation pretty much in every single product and service that is getting developed today anywhere in the world. That's a story we should be so proud of.
As a journalist sitting in Bangalore, I sometimes see a disjunction between Bangalore versus some of the other cities. I think Bangalore gets it, but I'm not sure whether
you need to travel more. You need to get out of Bangalore and then visit other places.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. Sitting in Bangalore, you can see the impact you are making around the world. It's amazing. It's so great. Thanks a lot for the fascinating discussion of 2022. It looks like it's going to be as good or better than 2021 for the industry. We just can hope that Omicron doesn't take too much of a toll on India as a whole. Let's hope everybody stays safe. Thanks so much, Debjani, Ram, Nitin. Thanks for speaking to us. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Shilpa. Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you.
Stay safe.